Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, actually, for most people. My name is Kim Lockhead. I'm VP of Marketing here at Knowi, and we're excited to present this webinar with our partners, Sagence Consulting. So I'm also here with Matt and Kevin from Sagence, and I'll let them introduce themselves in just a minute. Anyway, thanks for being here, taking the time out of your day to be here. So before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping points. First, the session is being recorded, so you will get a copy of the recording as well as the slide deck shortly after the end of the session. Also, everybody's on mute, so if you have a question, and we certainly encourage questions, there will be time at the end for Q&A. There is a Q&A panel or button on the bottom of your screen. If you click that, you can enter in your questions in the Q&A panel, and we'll take those questions at the end. So with that, let's just quickly go through the agenda, and then I'll talk a little bit about Knowi super quickly, and then hand it over to the Sagence team to get into the meat of the presentation. So obviously we're going to go through some introductions. And then Kevin's going to be presenting the project strategy about how Sagence came about delivering this data warehouse for Shirley Ryan. And then Matt is going to go through some use cases in pretty in depth. And then, as I said, we'll have the Q&A session at the end. So really quickly about Knowi, because you probably haven't heard of us. So we're a business intelligence solution that sits on top of modern data. So we were founded in 2014. So we're part of the sort of new wave of analytics solutions that are coming to market that are solving problems related to modern data. And what I mean by modern data is a mix of your traditional data sources that are maybe Oracle, in this case, SQL, so like PostgreSQL, even MySQL or SQL Server, and then some of the newer sources that are handling more of the web-based activities, so like MongoDB, Couchbase, MarkLogic, more of the NoSQL databases. So what we enable customers to do is get a complete unified view of all of their data, whether it's structured or unstructured, within a single analytics solution. And once you have that unified view, that we enable you to then add more interesting things like machine learning to do predictive analytics. You can start to build data products off of your visualization. So instead of just having dashboards, you can actually start to embed those dashboards into your data applications. So we're a global company. We serve customers from all sizes, and we're excited to be here with Sagence today to sort of have them show Knowi in action. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin from Sagence and let him take it from here.
Thank you, Kim. By way of introductions, my name is Kevin Henderson. I'm a senior principal with Sagence. We're a management consulting firm that specializes in data strategy, data management, and data analytics. We were founded in 2009 with a unique focus on data management and analytics projects within financial services, healthcare industry, as well as many other industries. My background includes over 20 years of planning and delivering data strategies. I have over 15 years of consulting experience, primarily focused within healthcare, as well as some financial services, and focus on business technology, data strategy, systems integration, etc. I served as the engagement lead for the Data Mart dashboard and data implementation phase of the project. And I'm here with my brilliant colleague, Matthew Fells, who is senior analyst with the firm. He was the lead dashboard developer and visualization expert on the project. His background also lies within healthcare, retail, banking. He's passionate about data, decision-making, BI, and uses his background in order to align people in the process technology. So before I go into the project strategy, though, I would like to first thank the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab, formerly known as the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, and its executive team and staff for allowing us to share this case study and advise on the project. I would also like to thank the broader Sagence team who contributed to the body of work that was completed for the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab from our partners, Alan Matsumura, Madi Lawson, Jace Fry, other team members, Norbert Funks, Shomo Gangley, and Barry. We wouldn't have been able to deliver this work without such an outstanding team. All right. So to kick off the presentation, you may be asking, so why did the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab want to partner with Sagence to build a data warehouse, data marts, and subsequent dashboards? Well, there were two primary reasons. First, executives wanted to have access to more and more data from across the hospital and from within different functional areas to improve patient and financial outcomes. And then secondly, researchers and administrators wanted to improve the quality of information that was being used for analytical modeling purposes. So the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab partnered with us to conduct the data strategy project to assess the current state, understand capability gaps, and then define a roadmap, which would include the build-out of an enterprise data warehouse solution for different user groups. And finally, once these capabilities were developed, we wanted to stay engaged on the project to operate the EDW environment and the subsequent dashboards. So our initial engagement started in January 2016 for the initial data and strategy roadmap, the results of which formed the implementation plan for the EDW build. The first release of the EDW was focused on ingesting Cerner EMR data into a data lake, data warehouse to support clinical outcomes. And then subsequent releases of the EDW included data marts for research administration, where we integrated grant and financial accounting information, a financial data mart, which focused on claims and 835 data, and then a data quality data mart, which focused on clinical data quality. And then after building the functional data marts, then we used the Knowi platform to actually provide visualizations and dashboards to different groups within the hospital. So we work with a large number of individuals from different levels throughout the organization. As I mentioned, we worked with the executive leadership team to really shape the vision. We worked with individuals from the Outcomes and Infometrics group to help sustain and provide data for their analytical models. We also work with patient financial services, finance, and other groups to bring in the data that they needed for the data solution. So, why an EDW? So, a top priority was to leverage data to improve outcomes measures, as I mentioned before. The hospital also wanted to improve access to data, because it was very hard in the early stages to access data across different parts and different functions. Wanted to develop new analytical capabilities that would drive and enable change. And then they also wanted to build an organization that leveraged data as an asset. So a key output of the data strategy and assessment phase was, mapping the hospital imperatives to desired data, healthcare, and technology capabilities. The key reasons for this was, really driving innovation, focusing on core competencies, enabling better metrics and analytics, and then being able to share data across the hospital. And then finally, to grow and expand the research function. So if we fast forward to today, now the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab has moved from more of a fragmented data landscape to a consolidated enterprise data solution that meets the needs of various users across the enterprise. The team was able to bring together data from clinical, research, financial domains to provide better tools to users. And we did this through a range of innovative technologies using Drupal, Talent, Stream Data, R, and Knowi, as well as hosting this all on a cloud-based AWS infrastructure. We now have over 22, I actually 227,000 patients, 56.5 million observations, 10 million assessments, and 1.6 million claims that build the foundation for a lot of the dashboards that you'll be seeing here in the future. And the total size of the data warehouse is now over 2 terabytes. So when we talk about data, or when people talk about data, sometimes it's very difficult to understand the business value. So today, with the permission of the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab, we're going to present a few use cases that express and showcase the value. So now I'll pass it over to my colleague Matt, who will talk about different types of dashboards that we built for different user groups in Knowi.
Thanks, Kevin. So just to reintroduce myself, my name is Matthew Fells, and I've been working on the engagement with Shirley Ryan AbilityLab for about 5 months. And as Kevin alluded to, I've been handling a lot of the development around the dashboards. And so I'm going to walk through 3 use cases with you and show the Knowi tools that we've created and demonstrate them live for the webinar. And so those 3 use cases are the first one being research administration, second one denials management, and the third one is data quality. So we're going to jump right into the research administration use case over here. So when we we're thinking about applications on where to create some of the dashboards for the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab, research administration was one of the first use cases that sprung up. And this is because in the hospital, there's a fairly robust research wing, quite a few dozen principal investigators managing all types of groundbreaking projects and robotics, biomechanics, several different areas. And they work with the research administrative staff, the principal investigators do, to maintain the budget for their particular projects. And it's really a team effort where the research administrative staff maintains the projects, but at the end of the day, the principal investigator needs to have some accountability for the expenses that they incur. And so the chief scientific officer, chief of research administration, asked us to create a solution dashboard that would allow for the principal investigators to have a quick and easy way to understand their projects as well as their financial performance. So as I alluded to previously, there's a relationship between the principal investigators who are conducting the research work and the research administrative staff. And so the goal is that the principal investigators are spending most of their time researching. They're really there to conduct some important work, and we wanted to make it a quick and easy way for them to see exactly how they're spending their money. But the existing scenario was that they would receive a once monthly report. It would almost be like a bank statement that said, okay, you spent all your money in this category this month, and here's maybe a little bit of a projection on how you'll end up by the time of budget end. And so that monthly report, although kind of the source of truth was somewhat infrequent enough when they were trying to resolve issues, and they wanted a way to really just be able to see their financials in near real time. And also, whenever there was an issue or an unexpected result, they'd have to communicate with the research administrative staff, which would produce a lot of back and forth communication, and it would just be a way that would delay issue resolution. And so in order to provide the the principal investigators with a solution here, we took a look and interviewed several principal investigators as well as the executives in the group, and really tried to review some of the logic at hand with the existing reports and find a way to blend that with the technology, take 3 different source systems. So there's different systems for the general ledger, the accounting system, payroll, as well as contract management, and understand how we can blend that together to provide all-encompassing way for the principal investigators to view their project financials. And so we kind of wanted to get from this bank statement view that was previously there into something that was almost like the mint.com for research financials. And so being able to just look at specific categories and understand spending and performance. And so before we go directly to the Knowi views, just want to say we're going to walk through the tool and want to focus on kind of three main things here. So these were features that we determined that we're going to implement with the principal investigators, and the first one being is alerts that tell the PIs which cost centers need attention, as well as allowing for the PIs next to be able to visualize all aspects and all details of their cost centers. And then finally, allowing for the PIs to view the staff and resourcing allocated to their particular cost centers. So I'm going to step away from the presentation for a second and move into the Knowi dashboard. Just want to keep in mind that disclaimer here that all this information is fabricated and obfuscated, so don't get any ideas about taking screenshots or anything. It's not going to provide too much competitive insight here. And then also I want to talk about how right now we're in the Knowi view of the dashboard, but our clients and at the sites are actually using an embedded functionality for the dashboard. So we've created a single sign-on portal that allows for principal investigators and research administrators to log in with their Shirley Ryan AbilityLab logins to be able to see the dashboard. And so what you see right now is the landing page for a principal investigator and exactly what they would see upon logging into that portal. So as you can see over here, we have just at a glance numbers indicating the overall portfolio for a principal investigator, and this is split up between grants and non-grants. So you might want to look at your NIH grants a little bit more scrutiny. So that's why we decided to split up the portfolio there. And then as you can see, we also have the budget alerts. So this is allowing for just a really quick and easy way for principal investigators to understand which cost centers potentially have issues. And so before they were just looking and they'd have to compile all the reports that they were given on a monthly basis, but now we provide this real-time alert that says, hey, either your cost center is over budget, you're at risk of going over budget, so a little bit of a proactive control, or you're at risk of having your staff go over budget, but not necessarily the whole entire project. And so we've been really, it's been great to understand how to implement these features, and I think in the future, possibility is, adding some emailing that goes out if a cost center is going over budget to even be more proactive and make sure that that issue can be resolved quickly. So in addition to alerts, we also provide this comprehensive, as I mentioned, view into an individual project's financials. So it's going to click down into that. And this will allow for complete management of a cost center, and a principal investigator can see every aspect, every expense that is being incurred for the account. So we have these cumulative expense views over here, as well as some high-level banners and some more alerts that are more on the individual cost center level. And we, the key here is that we're allowing principal investigators to visualize their expenses. So, their previous reports were just getting at the month level. You'd see what you performed on that month. It didn't have necessarily too much backward-looking details. But what we see over here is we could, very easily trace the cumulative expenses and understand how that compares to the project budget. To help the PI stay on track with their budget. We also have this burn down view that allows for the principal investigators to say, hey, I have this much budget left. I can really understand if I'll come in or come out of budget. Lastly, as I mentioned, we also have a way for the principal investigators to look at the staff and resources allocated to their cost centers. So I think that this is an interesting view because the principal investigators really wanted it from the standpoint that this was part of the expenses that they can control. So a principal investigator might have several research assistants, have postdocs on their projects, and they want to know not only how those postdocs bill to their cost center, but also how those postdocs go to other cost centers, and if they could make some adjustments and switch things around in order to prevent from going over budget, or maybe they have some room and want to bring on another resource. So we allow for that comprehensive view over here. You can see for your own, and then if you click into a actual employee, you can see how that employee breaks down across the various cost centers that they're billing to. So we can see that this employee is looking at other and billing to other cost centers, and this is increasingly important, especially when you look at NIH grants, and when the effort allocation is really something you need to keep track of and make sure that you're not exceeding. And so these are the tools that we can do to help detect potential issues in real time, as well as monitor everything. So going back and just summarizing the tools that we have here, we see that principal investigators are using these tools to find issues and identify root cause. For example, we had a PI the other day that was able to determine that someone was billing to their cost center that shouldn't have been billing to their cost center, and that was allowed. So we basically detected a process error, and previously, the data wasn't joined in a way that would bring those two sources of information together, and so the dashboard provided this comprehensive look into exactly what was going on with the cost center. And then just to show, I'm gonna kind of breeze through this a little bit, but these are the statements on the left over here, what they kind of were going to be for, and we turned that into a totally visual experience and a totally exploratory way where you can find out pretty much everything that's going on with your cost center. So some really powerful tools to allow for the principal investigators to be able to manage their projects better. Next use case, so the second use case of the three, is denials management tools. And so once again, when we were looking at some applications for the dashboard tool, denials management was one of those areas that we really saw that we can have some value. I think that a lot of hospitals are affected by their claims denials, and it's a large aspect of their revenue cycle, but it's also an aspect that's very difficult to manage, not necessarily from the strategy standpoint, but the data getting it. So, I mean, a standard Google search will tell you that, okay, let's analyze your claim denial populations and understand the trends ahead of it. But the thing is that data is very difficult to organize, and especially displaying in a way that's useful and actionable. So here we had the Chief Operations Officer and the Chief Financial Officers, as well as some directors in the finance groups, to ask us to find a way to create some dashboards that would allow for the detection of trends and understanding how denials were being handled at the hospital, in order to really make sure that there's less denials coming through and less denials being written off in the back end, and the hospital actually not getting paid by the insurance companies. So if we look into the scenario here, is previously the hospital was looking at some current populations of their claims denial populations, but the reports that were being generated weren't necessarily flexible and robust to filtering. So there was numbers being presented on this health plan, and this, for this reason, is rejecting these insurance claims. But it was difficult for just any standard user to go and try to find exactly what they needed. And that also brings to the point that there was a lot of different groups within the hospital that were looking to make some actionable decisions off of this data, so operational and strategy teams. And it was tough to make some flexible reports because of the nature of the data. So 835 and 837 data, it's not clean, it's highly transactional, and we really had to understand Cerner and how the data was located in Cerner as the EHR and their Profit module, and see how we could paste and blend those tables together in order to have something that's actionable and produce trends. So in order to create our solutions, we wanted to, first of all, have just a way to be able to determine trends for the denials. And the process that we underwent in order to get there and create the dashboard tools was pretty extensive, really heavily involved with talking to various individuals in the organization who held the expertise, sat down several meetings with these individuals to completely process map out the revenue cycle and the denials management aspect of that, and get end-to-end documentation with the data flows in order to be able to piece together these tables and undergo the right technological transformations to be able to display the information. So, when we go into the demonstration, I think that some of the use cases that we found for the tool that we made, which I'll bring up in just a second, is it really allows for the analysis of problematic claims populations, first of all. So if you do know exactly what you want to look into, you can do that with the tool. But we also allow for the ability to detect anomalies related to the denials and understand, hey, there might be a new denial reason that you have to attend to. Let's come up with a strategy to solve that. And then also finally, something we focused on in another use case was how individuals such as care management can work with the tool to understand how the hospital interacts with specific insurers. So often they'll go into meetings with insurance companies, and you want to have a data-driven approach to resolving issues and finding out what's going on with denials. So I'm going to jump into Knowi here and navigate to the denials tool that we created. Once again, this would be available in the embedded portal that we created for the client. And the page that loads here will show you exactly how someone who's logged into the tool would see things. And keep in mind that this is also data that has been manipulated to not be real, and it's pretty much dummy data. So jumping into it, this is the exact home screen that, as I mentioned, and you can see some high-level statistics, some time series data on the volume and transactions that undergo in the denials and for past 90 days. We have some population breakdowns between reasons, payers, health plans, encounter types, as well as clinical facilities. And this was also a huge win because previously the data was only really being analyzed in certain regards with the health plan and the reasons. So we're adding more populations, as many populations as we can, to allow for that exploration. And then, as I mentioned, one thing that someone can do here is they might want to look at, okay, give me all of the denied claims in the past 60 days that are for inpatient encounters and are related to authorization reasons. And so, as some of you might know, with insurance companies, they decide to report why they deny claims a little bit differently. One insurance company is different from the next, so it might be hard to bundle these reasons. However, with Knowi, you have filtering and say, hey, I want to give all the authorization-related denials in here to analyze them together. And so this search feature allows you to really bundle those in a really easy way and quick way. I'm not going to do that because I think we have other use cases to attend to. And the next one would be being able to detect anomalies. So we see spikes in days over here. And one thing that we can do is say, okay, I see a spike over here on August 15th. Let's go click into it and understand what's going on. And so this spike might be because a particular payer has processed certain reasons that day or for some other reasons, but we can find that really easily and either find a way to mitigate that or find a way to prevent that into the future by doing some simple root cause by looking at these graphs over here. So one thing we can analyze really quickly here is exactly what payer is accounted for the majority. Understand that this health plan looks like this amount was caused by relatively few transactions. So that's some good insight that we can gather really, really quickly here in a robust and filterable way. And then, finally, with the application of perhaps having a meeting with an insurance company, we could also click into a particular insurance company. For example, there are insurance companies that the hospital does work with more frequently than others. You might have a meeting with that, and previously it was that those discussions might be a little bit more anecdotal, like, hey, I'm hearing you are denying a lot of these claims, but now we can actually put some numbers to them, and those issues can be resolved in a data-driven way, and the conversations can be a little bit more fluid and guided. So the way you would do that is you click into this payer, and then the tool would break down exactly how the denial populations look for that payer. So I can show that real fast here. And so the one interesting thing that we had with this dashboard is everything is flexible. You can see everything that you would need to see related to denials. And then we've also incorporated this export feature, which is in this corner, which allows for analysts to basically get Excel downloads of the data for further research in their front-end system. So we can bridge the high-level strategy conversations to the case level to find out exactly what the process error might be that's leading to some of these denials. And so moving back into the presentation here, I think we covered how this tool can be used to find exactly what's going on, diagnosing some issues, as well as having more conversations. But you also want to talk about how this isn't the only denials tool that we have. We almost created this suite of denials dashboards that track denials throughout the whole entire cycle. So I just showed the front-end aspect with the upfront denials, but we also have views that take a look at which denials are being written off and the reason why they're being written off, as well as views that detect the immediate difference in denials and try to cover spikes easily. So there's a lot of exciting work being done in the visualization of that data. And I want to move on to our third use case as well. So the last use case that we have here is related to data quality. And so when we talk about data quality, we're talking about the outcomes data quality, the data that's being entered into the Cerner EHR system. So we have doctors, we have nurses and therapists entering in various measures that are related to data the hospital is taking. So for example, a nurse might record the temperature of a patient in a relative time, and we want to know if that entry is valid. So a nurse could be entering 180 degrees as the temperature. We know that's not possible. Like, that's not suitable for life. So we want to be detecting that as far as a data quality perspective goes, in order to monitor those types of measures. And also the goal with that is that the hospital is putting out some very good, very cool predictive, groundbreaking predictive technologies and models, and we want to have a way to monitor the data quality, monitor the health of the data to validate those models and say there's some good data going in, and so monitoring data quality becomes important from that perspective as well. So in order to do this, the chief medical officer engaged us to find a way to monitor a majority of the information that the hospital is taking in for data entry quality and other types of issues that could potentially happen with data. So we look at the scenario over here that was happening is there's, like I mentioned, a lot of predictive modeling efforts, and we just wanted to find a way to have some clear and cut ways to define the quality of the data and monitor that. We also found that although that data quality issues could be detected on the back end, so someone could say, oh, this isn't a valid value, I want to not use it. There was kind of a lack of accountability for how that value arrives. So we wanted a tool that would allow for some root cause analysis on potentially why certain aspects of the data being captured were not being captured correctly, and understand the volume for that to be able to really get down to some continuous improvement and potential re-education. And so, we see this as not only a tool that can help you just understand the data, but also help improve the way that the clinicians and therapists do their job by monitoring how how these tests are conducted and how the data is captured. So in order to accomplish this, we had to truly understand some of the data that was being captured at the hospital. So we monitor for around a high amount of fields, so 1,300 fields across 53 different therapeutic assessments. And so we had to interview therapists, nursing clinicians to obtain the acceptable thresholds for those data fields, as well as find out a way to display those in a way that would take data quality, which maybe at times isn't the most exciting thing in the world, and turn it into a really interactive, highly visual display that allows for people to make real interpretations of how data is being captured at the hospital. So in order to do that, we developed a data exploration and a data quality report. And so as we move into the demonstration, I want to highlight how those two views can be used to help, first of all, understand the overall data quality and associated trends. So if data quality is improving or not improving, you want to be able to track that, as well as understand if any intervention methods are improving the data quality. Also have the ability to look at the quality of individual therapeutic measures. So this really allows for root causing of where potential data entry errors are occurring. And then also have the ability to view the distributions of certain measures. So it might be very helpful for someone to say, okay, hey, I have this field that has some data quality issues. I want to see how the data for this field is distributed, and is it a normal distribution? What's the ranges? What are the averages? And so forth. So going to move into the tools that we created and start with the discrepancy report. That's what we call the data quality report that we generated. And once again, this would be displayed on the portal that we created, and be very easy to see for the users that need to get these views, at maybe a monthly or weekly basis. And then, as always, this is once again dummy data, so doesn't mean much in the context of the hospital outside of the ideas. So here's the exact page that someone would see who is using the portal. Right away, you can see the rate of values that are being entered that are considered invalid, meaning they are data entry errors. We can track the trend over time. So here's a 12-month trailing, and you can see that in this version of the data that we've pulled here, that the rate is actually increasing. So that might be a good thing to know and note. We also provide a way to be able to see, start to get at why the quality of the data might be increasing. What is the area where the quality is not necessarily there. And so then we also have the ability to look into all of the various assessments. So you can kind of view an assessment as a form that an individual at the hospital uses to collect data on a patient. So I think we have around 50 or 53 forms that we're tracking across these 5 different disciplines. And so it's quite a few measures that we're trying to keep track of. And then one thing that we might want to do here is look at a specific assessment or a specific form to monitor if the individual fields on that form have data quality issues, and try to further boil down what's occurring and what's happening with the data being captured. And so this is where you can really start to understand how certain people are executing these therapeutic tests or entering the data. And we understand that a lot of the job of sometimes these doctors and nurses is data entry, but it might not be something that they're necessarily keeping top of mind, because there's a lot of obviously there's a lot of other aspects that are going into their job. So we really want to monitor the fact that there's all these different pieces of information, and trying to understand, for example, if there is a case where maybe temperature is being taken incorrectly and the data is being fat thumbed for some reason, you'd want to know, first of all, that's happening and why that's happening. So we display the items on the forms and their relative error rates, as well as which forms are actually attributing to those particular data entry errors. So it's a good comprehensive look at not only the global scope, but also the individual assessment and form level, and understanding what's going on with the data quality in that respect. And then, lastly, I mentioned that we also have the ability to look at the distribution of the data. So I can click over here and find out a little bit more about what this assessment is. I think that if you're taking a look at the quality, it's really valuable to also understand the data in general that you're looking at. And so things you might want to know is how frequently this form is being filled out, what the patient's distribution is for that, as well as how the distributions of the various items look. So the tool that we created, we can look directly into what the distributions look like. And so this is all the data being plotted. I can really easily see the ranges. And so we can have conversations about, is that an acceptable range or not? And you see this distribution. And one interesting thing is we see maybe there's this double distribution over here, can detect if there's a different change, if they're measured in different ways. So some really interesting insights that you can gather from this tool. So wrapping up the data quality tools that we have here, it's really a great way to understand the monitor and monitor the health of the data. And so, for example, we have the predictive models. They understand that there's outliers and everything, but if we can do a little bit of work up front and understand what those outliers are coming from, if they're data entry errors or if they're actually true outliers, it helps not only alleviate some of the work that has to be done on the back end, but get a sense of how quality the data is going into the front end, and holding those people accountable for when the data is bad and trying to figure out exactly the reason why. And so now what can be done is users who are operating this tool can monitor pretty much every single 13 of the 1,300 fields that are being used to capture information on patients at the hospital. We can understand, if the trend is increasing or decreasing, some really easy to use and easy to gather insights that are available very quickly. So that wraps it up for the three use cases that we have. And you just kind of want to tie it all together here with how the EDW build factored into the dashboard and analytics tools build. Really started off with a strategic and assess point, which took about 2 to 3 months. And after you have the strategic roadmap, it took about 5 to 8 months to get the EDW, the data in there for the first domain, keeping in mind that that will vary based on domain complexity. And then at that point you're ready to use Knowi to create analytical tools with that data and maintain them going forward to help individuals at the hospital and other locations do their job better. So not just at Shirley or AbilityLab, it's other places can really benefit from the implementation and build of an EDW, and you can support analytics functionality relatively quickly in a short amount of time to start moving towards operating with more efficiency. So I'm going to hand it off to Kim, who will open up the floor for questions.
Great.
Kim.
Thanks, Matt. That was great. Yep. So as Matt said, we're going to enter the Q&A portion of the session. So just a reminder, there's a Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, then you can type in your questions. We already have a few that have come in. Matt was going through the presentation, so I'm going to tackle those while those of you on the line think about some other questions you might want to ask. The first one is because I think this is maybe a good one as a segue to what you just were saying, Matt. Because clearly what you've built has uses outside of healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So like outside of the healthcare industry, do you have other use cases that you've seen? And maybe start with you, Matt, and then maybe Kevin, you can chime in on this one too.
Yeah, I think for the research administrative dashboards, anything that has a R&D component or a project-based work that requires a budget and specialized resources, and I think you could really see benefits from creating a tool like that helps you give a comprehensive view of exactly what is being spent and where it's being spent. And then also for the denials work, analyzing highly transactional data is something I think that could always be applied to any where there is transactions going on back and forth that you need to analyze populations. Then lastly, I think that data quality is a concept that a lot of organizations are interested in, and there's always, when there's data involved, you want to know the particular value of it, or how it's how usable it is. And so data quality dashboards are a great way to monitor that and understand there's a ton of other applications in that space.
Right. Yeah, Kevin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would also add, in terms of industries outside of healthcare, we tend to do a lot of work in financial services. And so when you think about, the kind of work you do in financial services, we can use many of these types of dashboards to achieve different goals. So operational efficiency, I think, is one place that comes to mind. We've done work with investment banks, and you could see value in being able to bring data from different parts of the organization together for reporting purposes. And so, and especially when you're thinking about building analytical models and using machine learning and other things like that, data quality is essential. So you have to be able to make sure that the models that you're building actually have the quality data that's prepared in advance. And so, really, I think you could look at these tools as tools that you can use, within financial services. It could be applied, I think, in retail. And then even on the other side of healthcare, right now we're talking about the provider side. We've also done a lot of work on the payer side, and then there you'll see a whole host of applications in terms of managing claims, or looking at population health and other kinds of analytics. So yes, I think there's tremendous use for this kind of these kinds of tools, both the data warehouse, the data mart, and then the visualizations.
Cool, thanks. Since you're already talking, the next question is from you. So we have so Michael Lee from the audience asked, how did Sagence go about vendor selection, i.e. Knowi and Extreme? What were the key differentiating features, and how much involvement did Shirley Ryan have in setting the criteria selection? So maybe Kevin, you take that one.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, so we looked at the strategy phase as a way to look both at the data that would be used as the technology stack. And so we had technical architects on our team that were focused on sort of assessing the data extraction tools. So from an extreme data perspective, we had used the tool in other places. We made the recommendation based on some previous assessments and work that we've done. And that's sort of how we came to the decision on Extreme. And I think it was a collaborative effort between the hospital and Sagence. We did a lot of readouts and collaboration with internal IT. From a Knowi standpoint, we actually, it was interesting, we started looking at other tools out of the box of AWS, and we did prototypes with a few other vendors, and a lot of those other vendors didn't quite have all the features that we wanted. They didn't plug in as well to AWS and to the existing data structure that we had developed. And so one of our other technical architects and managers brought Knowi into the discussion, and we started prototyping Knowi, and it found to be much more easy to use, a better way for us to create a platform for visualization and dashboards, and then we never looked back. So.
Cool. So another question, and this one also probably for you, Kevin. Why did Shirley Ryan, AbilityLab, pick Sagence over some other consulting firms that are out there, and why, and including internal folks? I
wasn't necessarily there at the very beginning, but from what I was told, I mean, it was really the people. So we had a strong team, as I mentioned, partners, Alan Matsumuri, Marty Lawson, and another group of individuals focused on the strategy team. It was a competitive bid, and I think we were the firm that was best able to listen to the needs of Shirley Ryan and really try to understand what it is that they wanted to get out of a EDW, out of a data solution overall, versus just trying to throw an application or a package system at the problem. So, I think that's the beauty of what we kind of do at Sagence is really, start with listening, try to understand our clients' needs, and then build, custom solutions that fit the business challenge that they have using data analytics and our people expertise to really bring about a solution that drives and adds the most value. So that's what we, attempted to do, as we can, hope to continue to do as we work with the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab in the next phase.
Okay, cool. So getting slightly more technical, and maybe this one's for you, Matt. What were some of the roadblocks that you encountered during the implementation phase?
Yeah, so I think that with Cerner, first of all, it's a little bit of a roadblock from the fact that the data a lot of the times is kind of difficult to analyze just right out of the box. You have to restructure the tables in a way that is conducive to analysis. So we had to develop a data model based off of Cerner and get it to a point where you could actually sit there and compare portfolio or performance of certain patients across different assessments at the same time. So that was a big challenge. And then there's also a couple of different challenges with each dashboard, such as the amount of data that we're dealing with, the data flows with denials, as well as just the amount of clinical knowledge we had to ascertain with interviews as far as the data quality work went.
So just to follow into that, so you just mentioned there was a lot of data. Obviously, the stats are 2 terabytes of data is quite a lot. So was there anything in the Knowi platform that sort of helped you manage the large data sets and still render the visualizations quickly?
Yeah, so one thing that Knowi really helped with was caching our queries. So in the visualization layer, we'd bring in quite a bit of data, and instead of having the visualizations draw directly from the EDW that we'd built, they were drawing from queries that Knowi had cached, allowing for load times to be very good. I mean, it's the queries we're running, they're not simple, they're very complex, and so we were able to use Knowi first of all to handle the large volumes of data, but also to handle the complexity of the data to still deliver a good user experience for users of the dashboards.
Okay, cool. And staying on the data track, so obviously you're dealing with HIPAA data. What did you have to do to sort of manage that and ensure that you're HIPAA compliant?
Yep. So HIPAA compliance was something that we had to keep top of mind throughout the whole entire process. So not only did we collaborate heavily with the compliance teams at Shirley Ryan AbilityLab, but we also made sure that we were monitoring and reporting on exactly who was accessing this sensitive data. So we actually used Knowi to spit out a report that indicates what types of what users are accessing what types of dashboards and data. So we're able to track the clicks in the portal that we developed and produce those reports at any given time, and set even thresholds to say, okay, if this person is going over a limit, we'll email anyone who needs to know about that in order to maintain compliance on that side.
Okay, cool. So you had mentioned that this is with Cerner, and that there was you had some difficulty kind of coaxing the data out of Cerner. Obviously, there's other EHR systems out there. Have you worked with any of those? And maybe I'll give Matt a little break and pitch that one over to Kevin?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I think as a firm, we've looked at other systems. Obviously Epic is the other major system, or EMR package. So we've done analysis and assessments with both Cerner and Epic. We've got expertise in the firm to handle both types of platforms. So we're looking to expand and continue to grow our practice around, doing these kinds of projects, both Cerner and Epic, and being able to use, innovative solutions on extracting the data out of those systems so that they can be made even more useful and, unlock, the value to even higher levels. And so I think the patterns that we're able to apply here in Cerner and we'll apply both to Epic as well as we move forward.
Okay, cool. So we're sort of getting towards the end here. So I think we'll wrap it up, unless anybody wants to squeeze in one more question as I'm going through the close here. But I do want to share my thanks along with Kevin and Matt to Shirley Ryan AbilityLab to let us kind of walk through their use cases. I think there's some very interesting innovative uses that they've come up with Sagence. I also want to thank, obviously, Matt and Kevin for all the hard work that they've put in putting the presentation together and building out the dashboards so that we can showcase those for you today. And if you want more information, I would invite you to go to the Sagence website, which is sagenceconsulting.com. If you want to try out Knowi, we have a free trial that's available on our website, which is knowi.com. There's also a chat there, so if you want to ask a few questions of the team before you commit to signing up, just sign up for the chat. And with that, we're going to end the webinar session for today, and thank you very much for attending, and we hope you found it valuable. Thanks very much.